What was the worst time you mistakenly thought someone was making an advance on you? Story 1. I invited a girl over to smoke with me. We both were high as a kite. She said she was going to try and go home. I said, "Why don't you spend the night?" while I winked at her. She winked back and said she would. She said she was going to run to the bathroom quickly and be right out. I was freaking ecstatic, and my stuff was all up and excited. She grabbed my thigh, looked me in the eyes, and walked out of the room. I whipped it out, so when she came back, she would see my big ol' Alaskan bullworm. Turns out, she went out to her car and grabbed a blanket so she could sleep on the floor. She looked at my thing for a solid 20 seconds, not saying anything, turned around, and slept in my living room. It was the worst night of my life. We ended up dating later in life. She is now my fiancée. Before we continue, do us a quick favor. Smash that like button and subscribe to support our channel. Story 2. I danced tango. My dance partner at that time was a very attractive lady, divorced, and 10 years older than me. We had a really nice friendship and were pretty comfortable around each other. We had a great connection on and off the dance floor, and I sincerely had a crush on her. I was sort of her confidant, and she used to complain to me about her dates and how difficult it is to find a normal guy in the dating scene after a certain age. And there has always been a degree of tension between us. So, there was this workshop. I couldn't attend with her. She told me she recorded some videos if I wanted to see them. Sure, can you send them to me through WhatsApp? No. Dropbox? Google Drive? Apple Cloud? Nope. I said, I actually have a pen drive on me. Take it, and you will give it back to me on our next lesson. No, my kid is with my ex this weekend. Why don't you come home this Friday for dinner? I will show you on my laptop, she insisted. She always had her laptop with her. We could have gone to a coffee shop or something, and it was the first time she was inviting me to her place. I was like, wow, yes, I'm all in for this. So, on Friday, I dress up, and I go there with a nice wine and chocolates. She loves chocolates and a rubber in my pocket. When I arrive, she's cooking in her comfy clothes without makeup or anything. It was the first time I saw her without makeup or fancy dress. Dude, I suddenly realize how deep I am in the friend zone. We had dinner, we saw the workshop videos, we practiced some steps, and we had a lengthy conversation over tea sitting in opposite corners of her sofa, but not a single opportunity to kiss or a hint that anything else but having company was on her mind. At some point, she realizes the rubber in my pocket, they were pretty obvious under tight fabric, and asks me what I have there. I take one and pass it to her. She gives it back to me with a grin between amused and sarcastic and says, "Save them, big boy, you will not need them tonight." Later, I started dating the woman who's now my fiancée, but she still is a very dear friend to me, and I can help this feeling of what if about her. Story 3. About 15 years ago, I was sitting in a reserved section of a concert, and a girl doing security for the section was giving me an occasional smile and then stopped by a few times to give me a piece of candy. About the third time, she says, "Maybe after the concert we can go somewhere, and you can give me a massage." I was single in town for work and had a nice company-paid hotel room nearby. So naturally, this sequence of events caused my brain to shut down. It was quick to reboot though, and since I'd noticed one of the kiosks around the outskirts of the concert area was providing massages, I figured I could solve her plight. I told her about the kiosk, but for some reason it didn't seem like a well-received idea. She walked back to her post, and I was completely convinced that I had this in the bag if I wanted it. I kept thinking about what I might say next, and made sure to smile whenever she glanced my way. As the concert began drawing to a close, I finally worked up the nerve to say something to her. I gestured for her to come to my seat and said something like, "So what time does your shift end?" I don't remember what she said, but it was pretty dismissive, and she walked away. I couldn't figure out why she was no longer interested. Story 4. A friend of a friend works in the local music scene where I live. I mentioned that I'm interested in her line of work. One thing leads to another, and she invites me to a concert. We go, have a great time, and afterward, she says she wants to hit up a few clubs where she knows the owners. I tell her I've got work the next morning, but I decide to tag along anyway. We dance at a couple of places, and I start picking up on some signals. We end up staying out until 4 in the morning. I'm supposed to be at work by 10, No real chance to sleep, but I'm running on adrenaline and the hope that something might happen. She offers to let me crash at her place, which fits right into my plan. We get there, she shows me the downstairs bedroom, and then heads upstairs to sleep in her bed with her husband. Story 5. For a while, there was a guy in high school who had a crush on me. I made it clear that I wasn't interested, but he kept subtly flirting with me until he changed schools in junior year. Cut to 3 years later. The guy sent me a friend request on Facebook, and we get to catch up. I make it clear that I'm still not interested in anything with him, and he seems to finally understand. Sometime later, he invited me to a party with some shared friends. I accepted and met him there. After a while, someone asks if we've got a thing going on. Literally, just like in the movies. I say no at the same time when he says yes. I asked what he was talking about. He said that since I had agreed to go to the party, I apparently was giving clear signs. I was interested in him. I was just playing hard to get. I left the party immediately and unfriended him on Facebook. He still found ways to contact me. I ended up blocking him on all social media and changing my phone number. Story 6. When I was 22 or 23, a longtime female friend and I went out to the clubs. She's a little too drunk to drive home and doesn't want her parents to see her like that, so she asks to stay at my place. So, I let her have my bed, and I went to the couch. She comes out of the room in her underwear and says, "I can't sleep in there alone. It's too dark. Can you just sleep next to me?" So, I in all my devious 22-year-old glory think, finally this is happening. So, I go to the room and just go down to my shorts and hop in next to her, and she turns her back to me. For about 5 minutes, I'm kind of lost at this point as to what to do, and she says, "I'm cold. Can you cuddle and spoon with me?" At this point, I don't need any more advice. So I spoon with her and then eventually work up the balls to start kissing her neck. And then she says, "Whoa, what are you doing? You know you're like a brother to me, right?" And then she turns back around. Anyway, because I respect women, I stop and turn around and just look at the ceiling. I didn't sleep that night. She slept fine. She woke up, got dressed, and said thanks for taking care of her in her drunken stupor the night before and went home. And that was the last time I saw her in person. We stayed in contact through social media, and she recently moved back to where I am from, but after 12+ years, I can find it in me to try to rekindle that friendship. Story 7. I had a major crush on a friend in the neighboring state. He ended up inviting me to his prom. He paid for my bus ticket, hotel room, and prom ticket. I spent 5 hours getting there. He bought me dinner before prom. We got our prom photo together. He introduced me to all his friends. We did all the slow dances. Then, at the end of the night, during the last slow dance, I leaned up on my tiptoes and went for a kiss. He turned his head away quickly, so I kissed his cheek. Night. Ruined. I then hung out at a table alone while he talked with friends. He dropped me off at my hotel room and left. We pretty much never talked again after that. Now, I know I'm not a total idiot. He was giving me full signals. Apparently, he wasn't over his ex though. So, yep. Story 8. I made a friend during college, and we quickly became very close. We had a lot of the same classes together, and also had similar interests, so we really clicked and spent a lot of time together outside of school as well. I later came to find out that her dad is one of my main professors, and she attends that college because she got free tuition. It was weird at first, but I eventually became friends with the rest of her family as well. One day before class, I was chatting with the professor, and he asked me if I had any plans for the weekend. I told him that I was actually going to go pick up a pizza and head over to his daughter's apartment after class. Since he had some groceries for her, he offered to give me a ride over. Apparently, another student overheard the conversation out of context and thought that the professor and I were going home together, so they reported it to the college. As a result, I had to go in for an interview with an investigative committee. Once I had explained the situation, and presumably the professor gave the same explanation, the investigation was quickly closed. Of course, the professor and the rest of the family still joke about it, and my friend listed me on her phone as homewrecker. Story 9. My girlfriend, her best friend, and I all took multiple doses of strong powder and hung out for a while on the beach. It eventually hit us, and we were peaking really hard. So, we made our way back to the cabin we were staying in to just hang out and ride it out for the next 8 hours. Well, at one point, we were just all lying down in bed, talking about anything and everything, tripping balls, and everything that my girlfriend and her friend were saying. My brain was turning it into some weird innuendo. I kept thinking to myself, what the heck is going on? I keep hearing all these weird subtle hints about having a three-way from her. She's talking about climbing the Scandinavian mountains and riding them. I'm Danish, and some other weird stuff about getting wet while you do it. At one point, my girlfriend's friend leaves the room, and I tell her, crap, she wants to have a three-way with us, I'm telling you. My girlfriend wasn't believing me, but I quickly convinced her it was true. Logic doesn't make a whole lot of sense when you're this screwed up. So, long story short, we make the offer, at which she's super casual about it and says no thanks, and we move on. Often when guys are really high up on powder, stuff doesn't work downstairs even if they want it to, which was probably the case for me. The worst part was the fact that throughout the whole night, all of our conversations were being warped into weird crap. Clearly, something in my mind wanted this to happen. I even recorded a short portion of our conversation, knowing that I was going to listen to it later when I'm not tripping balls. Well, sure enough, I listened to it later, and yep, it was a totally normal conversation about hiking. I still cringe about it to this day. We get a good laugh about it now, but deep down inside, I never want to remember it. Story 10. My then-girlfriend, now wife. I and a few friends were grilling and drinking in front of the dorms. Now, I say dorms, but they're military barracks. So anyway, we're drinking, talking, and having a good time. It's not uncommon for random people to come join us, and as long as they bring beer or food, we don't care. More people, more fun. Well, this girl, whom we'll call L, joins the party. L is average-looking, and I've just started dating my future wife, so I don't pay much attention to her. As the party is going on, I notice L is constantly near me, sitting next to me, following me as I go around talking to everyone, watching me play beer pong. I'm flattered, but I'm still smitten with my future wife, whom we'll call A. I mention to A that L is following me, and we laugh it off. Well, A eventually gets a little jealous and goes to say something to L about leaving me alone. L gets a confused look on her face and says, I'm gay. I've been trying to get close to you, not your boyfriend. We didn't see L after that. Story 11. So, a guy I met at my university invited me to a party where he spent the night getting me drunk on sangria he made with some of my favorite fruits. After the party, we're on the bus, and I suddenly decided that I wanted to watch Braveheart. It was around 1 a.m. now, and he wants to come with me. I'm a poor student with lots of roommates, so we go to my bedroom to watch on my laptop. I get chilly and ask if he'll keep me warm, so he puts his arms around me and warms me up for the last hour of the movie. It ends, and he goes home. The next day, Sunday, we met for coffee and studying. I pick him up from his place, and we spend a couple of hours working and chatting. As I'm driving him home, I tell him I feel a real connection and want to see him again soon. He proceeds to tell me he's gay and in a long-term relationship. I nearly cried. I was so disappointed and embarrassed. That's the third or fourth time I've been fooled by a gay man. I think it's because I'm a tall woman, 6 feet, with broader shoulders and a more male sense of humor. I don't know. That was a rough day. Story 12. I met a cool girl through a mutual friend. She was a bit older than me, but single and attractive, and we shared plenty of mutual interests. We'll call her Ashley. We became friendly and started chatting a lot, primarily on Facebook Gmail chat. A few times we talked about being single, relationships, etc. I thought she was a cool person though, so I didn't want to push things and lose a potentially cool friend. After a few weeks, our chats got a tiny bit more interesting, sometimes talking about intimacy and things we both like, dislike, and maybe some things we misinterpret about the opposite sex. Later that day, in the same conversation, she said to me, Tensa, if you ever have any questions about what girls are thinking or trying to say, you should definitely ask me. Cool, I think. Could potentially be misread as flirty, given the context of our previous day's conversation, but not by itself. An hour or so later, the chat has only gotten more interesting. I believe it was a Friday. She mentions that she wants to go to a store that sells S-toys to buy herself a new toy. She asks if I'm interested in coming with her. Crap, she's actually into me? I think. Maybe I can be a bit slick. I tell her that I'm definitely willing to go with her. It sounds like fun. I then think I'm being slick, and I say, "Hey Ashley, you said earlier to ask you about what a girl's intentions may be. I have an interesting situation right now. What does it mean when a girl asks you to go with her to buy a toy?" With a winky face emoji. She texted me saying, "Oh, wow. Yeah, never mind. I'll go alone." To this day, I can't help but think that she thought I was gay, despite all of the contrary evidence. Story 13. I was in one of my computer science courses in college and met this very shy, very quiet Chinese woman. We were the only two in class who had used Linux before, and after class we had a nice conversation walking to our next class about our preferred distro and other geeky things. This pattern repeated every class for a few weeks, and my geeky self was thinking that I might have the jackpot. Finally, I get up the courage to ask her if she wants to do lunch after class, and she seems genuinely disappointed and says that she has to get to the community college nearby for the Chinese class she is teaching. I end up missing the next class, and so the next time I see her I ask her if she has the notes from the previous week's class, and she says she does, that they are back at her apartment, and we could go get them after class. Now I am totally down for this, obviously thinking I'm about to finally get some time alone. And everything is looking great, until about 100 feet from her apartment when she turns to me and says, "My husband may be home when we get there." I done a ring check, of course, but suddenly it became clear that I had been that guy, the oblivious nice guy that she was too polite to tell to get lost. I got the notes, mumbled a thank you, and went home to bury my head in shame. And that's the story of how I failed CS 215 by failing to ever return to class the rest of the semester. Story 14. I took a girl back to her house from my local watering hole. I've known her for years and always liked her. And she knew it, and she always flirted with me. We get to the house, make a frozen pizza, smoke some grass, and watch a movie, kind of snuggled up. I asked if I could spend the night, because I didn't want to drive. As I was pretty buzzed, no problem. She only has a love seat, so I ask if I can sleep in bed with her, no problem. I honestly had no intention of pushing anything, because at that moment, I didn't want to take advantage. She goes to the bathroom to do whatever, and I go to the room. I'm lying there fully clothed. She comes in and starts taking her clothes off right in front of me, says to me, "You aren't keeping all those clothes on, are you?" I get up and take my clothes off too. She lies down next to me, rolls over, and says goodnight, the bluest of balls. Story 15. I was fresh out of high school and was hanging out with a friend. She was complaining about her shoulders hurting, so I offered to give her a massage, started off with her shirt on. She told me to wait, then took it off, and I continued. She told me to wait again and took off her bra. I continued again, and she asked if I could rub her back too. So I started rubbing her back. At this point, she is sitting in a chair facing away from me, with me behind her. She gets up and sits on my lap, telling me not to stop. So I keep massaging her shoulders and back. She reaches back and grabs my hands, moving them to her chest and squeezing them. A moan escaped her lips, so I kept going, squeezing and pinching her chesticle area. She grabs my hands again and says that she loves that and loves me while she turns around, gives me a kiss on the cheek, and starts to head to her bedroom. I got up thinking, I'm going to get lucky tonight. She stops at the door, turns around and says, "Thank you so much. I'm going to go to sleep. See yourself out and call me when you get home." I called when I got home and she told me, thanks again and that we shouldn't do that again, but she loved it. Story 16. About 3 years ago, I was babysitting for 2 little boys. I'd been sitting for them for over 2 years at that point. Their parents, both in their 40s, wealthy, attractive, and surgeons, were always fun and friendly. That night, they were each heading out with their own groups. The dad and his friends were going to a Flyers game, while the mom and her friends were hitting a bar. They left at the same time, and the plan was that whoever got home first would pay me. The kids went to bed without any trouble, and the night was quiet. Later on, the dad and his 3 buddies came home, all of them clearly drunk and loud, piling into the kitchen. I was standing there, giving the dad a quick rundown of how the night went, waiting to get paid, while his friends joked around in the background. The dad grabs beers for his buddies and offers me one. I politely decline. He says he's going to run to the bathroom real quick. While he's gone, The other three guys, drunk and getting rowdy, start talking about heading to another bar. Then they start snickering. One of them looks at me laughing and says, "So, when we leave, what? You just like to keep staying here? Is that how it works?" In that moment, I was 100% sure the dad had told them he was planning to hook up with me. I shut that down immediately, snapping, "No, I go home." The mood shifted fast. I felt incredibly uncomfortable. The guys got wide-eyed, almost performative, like they were backpedaling. "No, stay. Please stay." "Oh no, we ruined it. She's not staying now." I stood there, keys in hand, heart racing. I wasn't just uncomfortable. I was defensive and ready. If the dad tried anything, I was prepared to slap him for even thinking about cheating. But then, about a minute later, the dad comes running down the stairs, grabs a beer to go or something, and yells, "The Uber's here, guys. Let's go to the bar. Bye. Don't tell my wife I got back first. She selt me so mad we went back out again." And just like that, they were gone. I totally thought I was getting hit on. I wasn't. The friends just wanted me to stay watching the boys more, so the dad could stay out more. About an hour later, the mom came home. She really likes me, and we Sep always had a good rapport. As soon as she walked through the door, she looked surprised and said, "Wow, I totally thought Dad would be back from the game already." I just smiled at her. She paused for a second, took in the look on my face, and it clicked. She let out a tipsy laugh and said, "Damn it, he went out after." Huh, she knew. Story 17. This literally happened last night to my best friend. He took out a girl he's been talking to for about a month, and she got pretty drunk and started playing with him under the table, and I guess whispered in his ear. Imagine what my mouth can do. They left within about 20 minutes after he softened up with her arm around him, and he said that as soon as they got in the car he tried to kiss her, and she said, "No, I don't want to do that with you." He said it was the most awkward car ride home ever. Story 18. A friend of mine and I were into role-playing together, pretty light casual stuff, but it kept us both entertained. My character was an herbalist, and I did a bunch of random research into various plant things, including the language of flowers. It's an old-fashioned way of sending messages through various specific flowers or flower arrangements. Well, the friend ended up sending me a flower arrangement, just randomly, out of the blue. No occasion. Some of the flowers, according to my research, meant roughly, "Let's bang." Except I'm straight. She knew I'm straight, and I was very confused because I was pretty sure she wasn't attracted to me. Also, she's happily married to a man. When I started to try to gently let her down with "thank you for the flowers, but I'm straight, you know?" she was completely baffled. Turns out she'd gotten a coupon for a free bouquet and decided to cheer me up because I'd been feeling down. Story 19. It was the year after I graduated from high school. I was in college close to home. A female friend of mine was a senior that year. She visited me at college a couple of times. We had been good friends. I'd always thought there might be something there. Around prom time, she calls me and says that she would really like me to go to her senior prom with her and that it would be a good time. So, I rented a tux, bought tickets, got flowers, rented a limo, and all that jazz. We get in the limo, and she sits on my lap the entire ride, laughing, giggling, and being flirtatious. Once we get inside the event, she kisses me on the cheek, tells me what a great friend I am, and says, "My parents like and trust you. I needed to get here so I could meet up with another guy friend without them finding out. If they call you later, tell them I went home with another female friend, and I didn't see her again." Story 20. Went out to eat with new friends the first week of college. The hot guy across the table started playing footsie with me. Turns out he was aiming for my male best friend. They've been dating for 3 years now. One time, I was in class working on a project with this beautiful girl from my high school. I decided to make a move and start by touching her foot with mine. I went for it, and it seemed good. No negative response. A minute goes by, and I try again to make sure it wasn't a mistake. Still, she wasn't annoyed by my attempts at footsie. Slowly but surely, I move my foot alongside hers and begin caressing it. My heart was beating so fast, and my 15-year-old self was amazed that this girl of all people liked me too. Then suddenly the teacher called her name. She stood up and walked away, but her foot didn't move at all. I looked down and realized I had been playing footsie with the leg of her desk the entire time. That was the extent of our blooming relationship. Story 21. My freshman year of university, there was this girl, let's call her Victoria, in my physics lab. I realized Victoria was also in my psychology class, which was right after my lab. I was a college freshman, and I was really excited to meet new people, so I decided to talk to her, and we became friends very quickly. Victoria and I would hang out before our lab, walk to our psych class together, and meet with some of her other friends after that class on occasion. Sometimes Victoria would even come to my dorm before class and hang out with me, but she would usually end up taking a nap. I thought it was funny. Victoria was cute, had a great sense of humor, and I really admired that she was taking such a hard course load at the uni, aerospace engineering. She was super attractive, and I began to develop a really big crush on her. One day, though, a few weeks into the semester, Victoria didn't come to the lab. I thought, okay, no big deal. She's probably just ditching and will show up at our psych class. She didn't show up to our psych class. I texted her, Victoria, you didn't come to class today. She didn't reply. Almost 2 weeks went by, and she still didn't say a word. I asked her good friend, who would meet us after our psych class, hey dude, have you heard from Victoria? She hasn't been to class in like 2 weeks. Is she okay? He said he didn't know, she hadn't replied to him either. And he hadn't seen her in about 2 weeks as well. I was worried. Another 2 weeks went by until I finally got a text. Hey, sorry I haven't been to class, and I'm sorry I haven't replied. I hope you're not mad. Are you free tonight? I wanted to see you since it's been a while, and I really wanted to talk to you. I miss you. She was alive. I was so relieved to know that she was okay. I had so many questions, and I was concerned as to why I hadn't seen or heard from her in over a month. But I was so happy to hear from Victoria, and I couldn't wait to see her again. She told me to come to her house that night, around 11 p.m. 11 p.m. Gee, that was kind of late. I wanted to play it cool, so I didn't think much of it, and decided to go along with it. When I arrived, she said her parents weren't home, and I should come upstairs to her room. She gave me a little tour and asked me to join her on the bed. I hadn't seen this girl for a month, and now I was lying in bed with her. My heart started racing. I was young, naive, and a virgin. I had never been in a girl's room before, and I was unaccustomed to their mating rituals. I liked this girl, and here we were holding each other in her bed. Before I could say anything or even make a move, Victoria took a deep breath and said, "Thank you. I don't know what it is about you, but it's Jack. I could finally sleep when I was with you." You see, Victoria had been CES.A, She had PTSD from her experience, along with a multitude of other problems like chronic fatigue syndrome, anxiety, depression, and insomnia. Victoria told me that she would go days without sleeping. She would only sleep when she would physically collapse from exhaustion, and for some reason, when she was with me, she could sleep. She felt safe. She told me that she had taken a medical leave of absence from school because her depression and anxiety were getting the best of her again. It was a constant battle for her. Her psychologist encouraged her to share with those whom she trusts what she experienced. She told me her whole life story that night, from the essay she experienced to her month-long absence from uni. She experienced so many awful things. I listened to her whole life story until 4 a.m. She asked me to stay and sleep with her because it was late. We cuddled that night, and she was actually able to sleep somewhat. I will never ever forget waking up in the middle of that night to Victoria shaking, whimpering, and crying in her sleep as she lay in my arms. Victoria was able to re-enroll the following year but had to take another medical leave shortly after re-enrolling. She is currently back at university, and from what I can tell, she is doing better. We do not keep in touch as much as we used to, but I am honestly okay with it. I was there in Victoria's life to support her and listen to her when she needed it most. Story 22. I was at the house of a girl I was dating. She had a cute female friend over, and I brought one of my buddies. We were drinking, and the other girl seemed to be flirting a little. I wasn't reciprocating much. Later we all get into the spa with my girlfriend next to me and the other two kind of opposite. After a while I feel this foot kind of playing with my leg, and I look over at the other girl. She's smiling at me. The foot then moves towards my package. I'm a little excited at this stage. The foot then makes caressing contact with my package. I don't make myself pull away. The foot caresses me for a while and I'm enjoying the risk in it. The foot then starts getting a bit more forceful. I squirm but don't make an effort to stop it. After a bit longer, the foot then basically kicks me in the sax. I let out a bit of a yell and jumped up out of the spa, probably with half stiffy. Confused as heck, I look at the girl who's looking at me questioningly, then I look at my buddy who is peeing himself laughing. It was then I realized it was my buddy caressing my package with his surprisingly skillful feet, knowing I was thinking it was the girl. Luckily, my girl didn't find out, otherwise I would have been in trouble. Hilarious practical joke, though he did put himself in quite an action to do it. Story 23. After my appendix burst, they gave me an emergency shot of morphine, and afterwards, I spent about 5 minutes explaining to the nurses that I could not accept their advances. I had surgery at 18. Try waking up from dong surgery, to nurses periodically checking on your hang down while you're high as a kite on the meds. I've never been so confused as I was waking up in a bed with one nurse checking my chart while another one seemingly batted my surgically enhanced dong around. I realized afterward she was not batting it but checking the dressing and making sure the stitches were intact. But I was certain they were there to smack my recovering giggle stick around because it was swollen and ugly like some sort of radioactive bratwurst, and they wouldn't leave it alone. I had an inguinal hernia that a doctor found at my 18-year-old physical and had surgery the next day at the Children's Hospital. Post-surgery, I wake up, think the pulse monitor on my finger is ET. Magic, curse at all the nurses when they ask me to stand and walk to the bathroom and yell very loudly. They shaved my hair down there when I finally make it to the bathroom. A nurse allegedly told my father that I had a fouler mouth than she heard at the VA hospital across the street. Morphine 1010 would do again. Story 24. I met a guy on Tinder who was kinda cute. We talked for like a month over text and Snapchat, and then he finally decided to ask me to meet up. I assumed it was to hook up. The day we were supposed to meet, he texted and said, "I'm sorry, can we reschedule? Something came up with my girlfriend, and I'm spending the day with her." When I proceeded to ask why, over the course of a month, he never once mentioned having a girlfriend. He responded with, "I was just looking for friends. My girlfriend wanted to hang out with you too. I don't know where you got the idea that this was more than friendship. I don't know, maybe the fact that you hit me up on Tinder." Story 25. I met this drunk girl at a party. We hit it off and exchanged numbers. A week later, I got a phone call from this girl. She's mumbling some things on the phone, so I figured she was drunk. She then asks me to come over, she wants me there, etc. Something was off with the way she was talking, and I didn't ask why. Thinking I'm about to get some that night, I rush over. Turns out she was planning on offing herself that night and struggled with depression as her ex had offed himself a week before on top of a bunch of other stuff. She was up on a roof and wanted me to find her there. Really not what I was expecting after that phone call. I ended up staying there and offering her support. We kept in touch daily after that, and she became one of my best friends afterwards. Story 26. It was my 17th birthday, and a girl I had a huge crush on throughout high school was there. We were all hanging out outside when she came up from behind me and wrapped her arm around me. I wrapped my arm around her, thinking she wants to get close. Instead, she yanked a tag I had hanging from the new sweater I was wearing. I quickly moved my arm. Ah, the golden years. Story 27. When I went swimming with all my friends, this girl I went to school with just came back to town. We were all having a good time, and then she started slowly backing into me. Nobody saw, but under the water she wrapped her legs around my waist and stayed there. Later on I asked her if she was interested in fooling around. She said she didn't mean to give me mixed signals. I was still confused. Someone sent me a sensual picture once and told me that they wanted to stay friends in the same message. She kept sending me pictures of her in her undies after that too. Some people are just strange. The girl I lost my V-card to slept in the same bed with me 3 nights in a row. She was constantly flirting with me, but in the bedroom, the first thing she would say was that she just wanted to be friends and wanted to sleep with me. Every night was spent rounding some number of bases only to be shut down 10 to 15 minutes later. The third night, after about 20 minutes of messing around, I'm just like, screw this, I'm gonna try to slip it in and see what happens. You know what happens? She says, "Oh, finally? After 3 nights?" I still don't know what was going on in her head. I've had this experience often enough that I actually started to basically give a lecture on communication in any relationship I get even remotely serious in. Basically, look, this has been a problem in past relationships. If you even act like you don't want me to do something, much less vocalize it, I will stop, period. If you want me to do something, you better damn well tell me straight up. I don't play hard to get. Story 28. Reminds me of the time I got pretty screwed up on booze and Molly for a birthday and ended up blacking out. A rather attractive friend says she thought I was choking in my sleep because I kept gagging, so she put my head on her lap so I could breathe better. I then tried to rub her legs, and she stopped me. She says I let out the saddest sound of dejection, like a puppy when you put it in the crate. Then I rolled over and went back to sleep. Story 29. I was a sophomore in high school and found the courage to ask a girl out who I had a crush on. She said yes, and we spent an entire Saturday together. It was pretty fun, and she seemed to enjoy it. We were in my room later that night, and she wanted to play Super Smash Bros. I was winning easily, and she ended up trying to pull the controller out of my hands, which ended up with both of us on the floor with her on top. I got a stiffy pretty fast, and she felt it. This made her get up and mumble, "It's not like that," and then leave the room. She called her mom to pick her up, and that was the last time she ever spoke to me. I felt like a jerk. Story 30. I tried to buy a Nintendo Switch pre-order from my coworker's college roommate last week over texts. A coworker gave me his friend's number, so I texted his friend telling him I would be happy to purchase it from him. We made casual small talk, just stuff about video games and how we knew our coworker, etc. He seemed normal enough. At one point, I mentioned that my husband wouldn't have to wait in line for my Nintendo on release day, and he flipped a total switch on me. He asked me why I was flirting with him and leading him on, and why I texted him in the first place if I was married. I made it clear the only guy I was interested in was my husband, and I guess Link. I just wanted to buy a Switch, and oh, this dude is also married and has no idea my age, what I look like, just that I am a slightly nerdy and married female. Story 31. I went out to a party with a friend and met one of his female friends. We got pretty drunk and danced together all night. It turned out both of us had been planning to crash at his place. Since we'd been flirting a lot, we decided to share the couch. We started making out and I dove below. She then ripped my pants off and said, "Don't move, I'll be right back." She went to the bathroom in nothing but her bra. She never came back. I talked to my buddy about it, and he said he woke up to see her sleeping on his floor. I'm still confused about that night. Story 32. I went on a birthright trip in 2012. I ended up falling for one of the Americans, Daniel. The day before, we spent the day talking to each other. I had hung out with my British cousins, who were in Tel Aviv. Their son was in the IDF. And they gave me cookies, cake, and champagne, since they couldn't bring it back to the UK. Fast forward a day, Daniel and I are walking in Tel Aviv, and he asks me how the night before was. It was the 4th of July. I said I hung out with my British cousins and that they gave me food. He said I should have found him to share the stuff. I invited him to eat the cake and drink champagne later on if he came to my room. He said, "I'd love to eat your cake." We spent the rest of the day together sharing cookies and pizza, and I was falling for him. Later that night, my roommate gave me a makeover and Daniel came to my room. We didn't drink, but he did eat the actual cake, not what I had actually hoped he'd eat. It was apparently all just a friendly chat, as he later started to talk about his girlfriend. I had no idea he had a girlfriend. How ironic that the boy who helped me open up my heart completely shattered it. I didn't get laid on the trip at all, not even a kiss from anyone. Story 33. I was at a bar with my sister and her cunning gay friend, who I can only describe as the main character from Cruel Intentions. Super suave. Anyway, I was talking to someone at the bar and I felt him tap me on the shoulder from behind. He said, "Alex, I'd like to introduce you to my friends." I turn around and say hi to his friends, and out of nowhere, my sister starts cracking up like nothing else. Couldn't figure out why. Anyway, I carry on. The next day, my sister tells me that as I was facing away and talking to someone else, her gay friend told all his friends, "I want to introduce you to my new boyfriend." He taps me on the shoulder. I turn around. He introduces me to his friends. I say hi to all his friends. and all his friends think I'm his new boyfriend. Like I said, super suave. Story 34. So, I had an ex whom I'd stayed friends with back in high school. He liked to prank, flirt with me, then pull back and laugh at me for falling for cliché moves. Well, one night, I decided I was going to turn the tables on him. Except, I ended up chickening out and kind of laughing to myself about it the whole night, hinting that I'd come up with something but was too embarrassed to actually do it. He kept wanting to know what specifically, so I got on my knees, leaned in, and whispered, "I want you." He looked at me and asked, "Are you serious?" And I said yes, thinking he was asking me if that was seriously the prank. We were only 18, so he didn't miss a beat. The next thing I know, we were making out. Luckily, my mom came home from shopping about 30 seconds later and interrupted everything. But the awkwardness didn't end there. When I dropped him off at home later that night, he gave me a speech about how dumping him ruined his life and that he was willing to fool around, but he would never forgive or trust me enough to date again. During this speech, the car windows fogged up and his sister came out and started teasing us as if we had been fooling around in it. So yeah, that whole night was just a train wreck of misunderstandings. Story 35. I chatted with a cute young flight attendant after commenting that I recognized her from a previous flight. I wasn't trying to flirt. I was just being friendly. She also recognized me, which was evidently really rare for her. We introduced ourselves, and she confided that you can always just ask for extra service items. I joked that I just wanted to take my roommate's food since this all started, because I asked for his snack that he didn't want. After that, every time she walked by, she smiled at me. I figured she was just really friendly, but I started feeling weird smiling back at her every single time, so I went to sleep. As we started to land, she woke me up, handed me a flight pin, and then sort of ran away. I thought it was very cute, and I was really flattered. So, I gave her my number as I was leaving the plane. She said thank you, but didn't really seem excited by it. This surprised me, given how coyly she woke me up and gave me a totally random trinket right before running off. I look really young. In retrospect, she may have thought I was a teenager and not a man in my 30s. She was probably just being extra nice to a young traveler. Story 36. A good friend thought I was making an advance when I wasn't. I went to a party with a female friend. She picked me up and drove to the party, as she knew the people and the location. At the party, she has a bit too much to drink and tells me to drive back to my place. I do that. When we get there, I tell her she should just come up and stay over rather than drive. She gets really weird about it, and at the time, I didn't get it. She then just leaves as I attempted to tell her it seemed like a bad idea for her to drive if she wanted me to drive part of the way back already. Only a bit later, when I got upstairs and replayed things in my head, did I realize she thought I was trying to perhaps get her into bed. I wasn't doing that at all. I was in a stable, long-term relationship at the time and had zero interest in messing that up. I was just worried about what state she was in to drive. It was tough to tell as she seemed okay, but she had asked me to drive the first leg. Luckily, she got home okay. But it changed things forever after that. We didn't hang out anymore. An attempt was made to address it, but it didn't seem to help. Just overall a weird, sad end to a friendship. Story 37. I had a young, very talented paid tenor in the choir I directed. After rehearsals, he'd whisper in my ear things about others in the group he thought I should know about, such as the baritone next to him that got a beat off during a vocal fugue. He spoke so privately that I could feel his breath in my ear as he relayed his information. Finally, I asked why he spoke in such dulcet tones and sometimes let his lips brush my earlobe. He got red in the face with embarrassment when I asked and said he wasn't trying to put the make on me, but that his tenor voice carried and he didn't want to risk anyone else overhearing even a whisper. Story 38. I was living in a college town and working locally where all my coworkers were in their early 20s, as was I. I'd been crushing on this girl from work after we had become friends. One night she showed up at my apartment at 2 a.m. She lived across the street and she was drunk, wearing a very short dress. We started fooling around, but then I was like, wait, could this turn into SA? Because I was sober and realized she wasn't in control of what she was doing. So I stopped. She fell asleep on my couch, but not before drunkenly telling me, "I love you." The next morning, when she appears to have sobered up, I'm in the living room looking outside my window because I thought I saw something weird in the pool, like a dead animal, and it caught my attention. She comes up behind me and gives me a hug. Keep in mind, she's now only half clothed and had wanted me to bang her the previous night. So, of course, I kiss her because I figure if she's still that affectionate, then maybe she's still in the mood. Nope, read it completely wrong. She leaves, and I'm like, whatever, because I'm tired of taking care of a drunk person. The next day, I went over to her place to figure out what's up with us because by then, I'd realized something was up. She was like, sorry, I'm a jerk, and I shouldn't have been over there or done any of the things I did. Her words, not mine, okay? Story 39. An older payroll lady at work, whom I usually see every morning around the same time when I clock in, and who compliments my dimples every other time, which got weird after the first few times, said to me after not seeing her for a few weeks, "Hey, were you on vacation?" I said, "No, I've been coming in a little later than usual, that's all." "I'm still here," she said. "Oh well, I guess I've just been missing you coming in." I immediately tried to compute what she meant, but all I could come up with was that she's stepping up her flirting game on me, but I just tried to block those thoughts and figured I'd just say something for a quick laugh to escape what I thought was an awkward encounter. "Oh, yeah, I've missed this place too," thinking it was a good way to not have to say the obligatory, "I missed you too," plus I felt it was sarcastic, since no one wants to be at work, right? And that would be a funny, smooth conversation ender. "Yeah, I am your conscience." Then as soon as I walked away, I realized that she meant we had just been missing each other due to the schedule change. Story 40. My wife and I went to New Orleans probably around 2003. We'd been out to the bars and we were having a good time. We were watching a jazz band at this one place and I'm looking around and see this guy who looks like Ed from that TV series. He was with this woman who kept looking at me and smiling, maybe a little wave. After some time, I leaned over and said to my wife something along the lines of, "I think that woman who's with Ed over there is hitting on me." She looked over and was like, "Oh my God, that's Melissa Gilbert and Tom Cavanaugh." We talked to them a little. Turns out they were there shooting Heart of the Storm. I got a picture of my wife with them. She claims Melissa probably thought I recognized her. I still call it the time a TV star was flirting with me. Also in New Orleans, I was meeting my girlfriend for dinner at a tiny hole-in-the-wall restaurant. I was early, so I got a table. At the next table was a woman sitting alone, facing me, reading her menu. She looked up from her menu at the exact same time I looked in her direction while I'm scanning the restaurant. We locked our eyes, and we kept glancing away and then glancing back to see if the other is still looking. This goes on till a guy shows up to meet her. He sits between us, and we can no longer make flirty eye contact. Eventually, my girlfriend shows up too. She sits down and immediately whispers, "Oh my God, that's Maggie Gyllenhaal." She probably thought I was going to come over and ask for an autograph or something. The guy she was with was Peter Sarsgaard, and I ended up bumping into them again the next day, this time with less eye contact, but still awkward. Story 41. This girl I'd been kind of seeing asks if I'd take her to our farmhouse to have a barbecue, just the two of us. There was liquor involved, and the whole shebang. Throughout the evening, we'd flirt, and things got steamy fast, and she excused herself to go to the bathroom and took baby wipes with her. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.